Welcome, everybody, to another episode of MC Fireside Chats. My name is Brian Searl with Insider Perks from Modern Campground. Hopefully, we're actually live, guys. If not, we'll just have to premiere this as an episode later. I hit the go live, and it was like, I don't know if I want to go live, and just sat there. So I clicked it again, and it said stop, and then restarted. So I don't know if everything's in chaos now, but either way, we'll have a good episode, and we'll premiere it live if we need to later on different various social media networks. So how's everybody doing today? We're excited to be back for our third week episode of July already. Can you guys believe summer is almost over already?
Crazy.
I feel like time is just going crazy in 2026, super fast. Exciting year. So let's just go around and briefly introduce ourselves. We have a couple of current guests. We have Mike Harrison from CRR. We have Sandy Ellingson, who may or may not be able to talk. She's driving down the road. She feels extremely unsafe. I want to just sign a disclaimer of liability with her to absolve my show of all issues should she get distracted on the road or something. But and then we have a couple special guests, so let's just go around the room and introduce ourselves and briefly tell us about yourselves. You want to start, Mike?
Sure. There's no way Sandy is driving. Look how she's sitting in the chair. Like, if she's driving in that current seated position, I don't know if she got her feet up or what. But yes, good afternoon. Happy summer. Happy midsummer, I guess. I mean, we're almost exactly at the halfway point through the year. My name is Mike Harrison, Chief Operating Officer of CRR Hospitality. We own and manage beautiful luxury RV resorts, manufactured home neighborhoods, storages, car wash, a lot of different type of assets and hospitality assets. And we also do third-party management and consulting for many clients in the industry as well.
Thanks for being here, Mike. Love your background. Sandy, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, I am on the road, but I am not driving. So Mark is driving, and Morgan is sitting beside me, which is why I have to sit sideways. But I am Sandy Ellingson. I'm an industry advocate. I go and advocate for my campgrounds and my campers with the industry, and to make sure that they understand how important we are and how they need to work with us and all those kinds of things, and I love it.
Okay, I think I figured it out. I think her camera's reversed. That's why we thought she was driving. Her mirror image, right? Unless you're in Europe driving.
Has to be.
Affects it. Okay, now I got to figure it out. Sorry, Wendy, go ahead.
Wendy Heineke, I'm with Hospitality Across America. Thank you for having me. It's exciting this is my first time. Anyways, I actually, simply put, I assist outdoor hospitality owners to figure out where the money's leaking and how to fix it. I've got about 30 years of hospitality experience, all hands on, and I'm a chameleon by design. Anything that a property owner or manager needs, I'm there to help them. And I'm an RVer myself, so I love seeing Sandy traveling right now. And I see the places where the guests want to go, and that's where I get to go.
Awesome. Thanks for being here, Wendy. Excited to learn more about Hospitality America. You and I have crossed paths, I think, once or twice before, but excited to see all the new things that you're into since then. I'm sure it's ever moving and changing. Tyler?
Yes, Tyler Otto with Specialized Accounting. We're outsourced accounting services for the hospitality industry. So started this firm after my career with places like Vail Ski Resorts, Montage Hotels, independent lodging company that didn't do so well during the pandemic, and hence why I was a free agent to start a firm. 2020 wasn't great for hotels. Who knew? And our team of 18 serves primarily just hospitality clients across the U.S. So a lot of hotels, marinas, campgrounds, RV resorts. That's where we live. That's where we specialize. And we have a lot of fun doing everything from the monthly accounting, tax strategy, planning, filing, advisory, and everything that comes with what you want out of an accountant. And Corbin, our customer success manager, is here. I mean, he's the one that talks to everyone. Corbin, what did I miss?
That's the main point. Yep. So we love working with those folks. If you reach out to us, I'll be just the front guy at the gate and then pass you off to the real brains of the outfit like Tyler and the Sura team.
All right. My opening question is for Tyler. Tyler, with the new big, beautiful tax bill we got from Donald Trump, how can a campground not pay any taxes?
That's always the question, right?
Like on their property, or what needs to happen? That's the only question.
Well, I mean, there's the easy answer. You don't want to pay anything in taxes. Don't make a profit. There's the easy answer. Solved.
Might be problematic.
Yeah, I know. So then beyond that, it's always the games of what are the long-term goals? Because you're not going to avoid taxes forever. It's, well, when are you going to have income? What are you doing in the future? Do we want to take depreciation now? If people's goal is just to mitigate taxes this year, they're they're forfeiting the entire strategy of what are they doing later in life and when do you really want your bracket to come down or not. And that's a lot of things we're advising clients on. But yeah, with the one big beautiful bill, the easiest things is bonus depreciation's back. So we do a lot of cost segregation studies and speeding up what we can depreciate to get a loss on paper, but money in your bank account.
Well, and I joke about the one big beautiful bill because that's the one thing everybody's paid attention to. Obviously, there's lots of nuance between everything else that goes into accounting. I know it intimately well, having a U.S. company and a Canadian company and a personal LLC in the U.S. and all kinds of other stuff that I'm operating, right? But talk briefly, like I think this is important for people to hear because we've heard about the narrative, I think, in the media from whatever network you listen to about what the big beautiful bill is, that it has tax deductions, things like that. But there's two things in there, or at least the one you were just talking about, that are really important, I think, for campground owners to really wrap their heads around, right?
Yeah, I mean, the depreciation side is huge. With bonus depreciation back, for those of you who don't know, you used to be limited. We still had one other tool in our pocket called Section 179, and I don't want to put you guys to sleep, so I'm not going to go through all the specifics, but you were limited on, hey, if you bought a $20,000 RV unit to put on site, you were limited on how much you could depreciate in that year and offset against your active income. Bonus depreciation brought that back in a big way where you can take the benefit right now, which is super cool. But with that, the one big beautiful bill was touted as a lot more opportunities. And there's several things that just, for the average small investor, we're not seeing it materialize as much, as well as just solid tax planning strategy in your personal life. We see people doing things like S-Corp elections, paying their kids out of the business, doing solo 401k contributions. And those are still moving the needle a lot more than spending time with some of the updates in the one big beautiful bill, at least what we're seeing with the average small, 1 to 2 property owner.
Is there a way to take advantage of, and maybe this is a forward thinking, question that nobody's really thinking about right now, but like for me, I'm big into like AI. And so I'm taking advantage of a lot of the research and development tax credits that can actually reduce my tax bill significantly. And so I'm curious, is there anything like that would ever apply to campgrounds? Like, can you research camper behavior? Can you research new amenities? Is any of that might apply?
So there are R&D tax credits where, yes, like you can say, hey, if you're developing a new service and a new tool that's coming into the market, there are R&D tax credits you can get. The hard part is the juice going to be worth the squeeze? Because if you're just playing around, like, are you really going to go through all the work to file those extra forms and pay an accountant to get a credit, but you're going to spend a couple $1,000 in getting the credit on paper? Is it going to offset your costs? And the hardest part is it can't be, labor expenses or regular expenses that you're using for just everyday operations. So a lot of times it's hard for people to justify, hey, I'm the owner. Now part of my salary is going to this R&D. Like there's a lot of documentation. But the thing is, the R&D tax credit isn't really new to the one big beautiful bill. Like they've been doing this has been around for a long while. It's just a lot more prominent right now. But I mean, you'd have to come up with something novel. And if you're going for it, like there's a lot of hoops to jump through because we all know the IRS likes to come back and smack people's with penalties and interest. That's how they make their dough.
Yeah, but that's what we have AI for, to come up with novel things. Anyway, sorry. But so what else is on your radar? Like while we finish up an accounting conversation, right? Like I want to talk about your business and things like that. But what else is on your radar that you think campground owners should know for 2026 to take advantage of whatever's happening in the accounting and landscape? Because it's different. It's different having a custom service for someone who knows the industry, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think, the biggest thing is running your campground and the tax benefits doesn't happen in a vacuum. Everything in the world of taxes, unless you did a rollover business startup in a C corporation and for some reason are holding your entity somewhere else in a C corp, all the taxes flow through into your personal life. And so a lot of people don't really think about what are my long-term goals? What am I putting away to retirement? Am I trying to self-direct my investments into new properties I'm investing in? Again, we get back to paying kids, entity structure. We had one client we just brought on this last month that we found for the last 15 years under their old accountant, they were paying around an extra $45,000 a year in self-employment tax they didn't need to. And that's not even new to 2026. This is just doing the fundamentals and the basics of good entity structure, as well as protecting their assets, right? Like CYA, man, just assets instead at the end. but making sure that your entity structure doesn't leave you open for liability or if someone wants to sue you. So really just looking at your tax structure and setup to optimize for savings, and looking at what's going on in your personal life. Again, I look at retirement wise, when do you want to start taking money? Well, okay, do we want to pay more taxes now at a lower rate when our business isn't doing well because we know our retirement funds are going to be worth a lot more and we're going to have higher taxes later? I think that's the big thing, is everyone and every tax advisor is so stoked to tell you save money this year, but that's not always the best choice if it's going to cost you more in a couple of years down the line.
If you were Sandy's accountant, could you deduct all her RV travel for her? Is that a business
It's
expense?
funny. Sandy, you have a home base, right? You have a separate home?
No.
No? Oh, see, Sandy, so that's a bummer. If you can show that you have a brick and mortar home and that the RV is not your primary residence, we can actually do a lot to deduct almost all the travel, everything else, saying it's for business expenses. And we have quite a few clients we do this with.
I've heard that she
percentage
lives
of that?
in Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah,
Yep.
technically, I do have a really good CPA. My dad was a CPA, so he taught me how to set myself up kind of right. So when I say no, I don't have a home base, yes, I do, but I have rented a space that actually is commercial, but we use it to go back and forth and as a home base.
There you go.
You're a little bit low, Sandy. We caught everything you said, but it's just a little bit low. Just so you want to move closer to the mic or something, or you can turn it up anyway. We could hear you, but it is kind of low. So you do have a home base. We heard that you may or may not have a home base. You may or may not be deceiving the IRS on your taxes. But we're not going to say any of that publicly.
No. Well,
That's
no,
it.
I am literally following all the laws, but there are, because of what I do and I work in all aspects of the industry, there's some very creative ways that I can do what I need to do and still have maximum, deductions. So,
Yeah.
because I serve on the industry side. So 9 times out of 10, I'm the first one to get a unit when it rolls off. So I am doing R&D. And so, and all the expenses are R&D for that company. So it kind of works out. I've got a really good way to pay for my addiction.
And that's the thing. There's strategies for everything. If you go onto TikTok, there's going to be so many advisors say it's easy. You can just claim this credit. There is always the legalese and boxes to check that you got to make sure you're doing right, or it's going to come back to bite you. And what most people don't get is they're like, well, I was able to submit a tax return that had, a reasonable compensation of $10,000 a year, so it must be allowed. I can submit whatever I want on a tax return and get it filed with the IRS. It's if it gets audited, will it pass the audit? And if they take it to tax court, do you have a lawyer that's willing to fight it? Not a CPA, because the CPA and tax court can't represent you. You have to have a tax attorney. Do they have a defensible stance? So that's where it's like some people like, well, my current CPA is able to file this for me. It's like, well, make sure your bases are covered, because I see one article a week of a firm getting indicted because of certain practices. So we can submit whatever we want. Does it pass the mustard test?
You just need to protect yourself by having like a shell campground in the Bahamas or something like that.
Yeah. That's what works for you.
I don't know if it works. I'm not brave enough to own a campground at all, period, to begin with. So, Mike, what's going on in your world? Anything new that you think we should talk about since we've been last together in a month? I forgot to ask that question of my recurring guest. Same to you, Sandy, if you got something.
Well, Sandy can go if she wants. She's always got something new and interesting, some special data project that she can't tell anybody about.
Well, hey, listen, I am actually out from under every non-disclosure that I have signed right now, so I can just talk all afternoon. But we've been actually on the road for 2 solid months, and so what I have seen and what's been so encouraging to me is we've been out in the Northwest, and the number of campgrounds that we've been in that are my favorite, they're kind of like my mom and pops, they're not all gloom and doom. Their occupancy is not bad. They are doing all the right things. Their infrastructure is not falling apart. It's not people are camping. And so seeing this whole group of people that they're totally positive, and they totally don't understand some of the language that they're hearing out of some of the East Coast campgrounds, which is kind of funny. So I've really enjoyed it. And I've been actually validating some of the research that Scott Barr did, and took some of the things that he stated, and then I look for those things when I go into campgrounds. And it's interesting how many of the things he said were very accurate. Sadly, I go into a lot of the campgrounds, and I would say that 90% of the units are at least 2 years old or older, which validates a lot of the conversation about people aren't buying new rigs, and it's not about the interest rate, it's not about gas prices, it's about quality. But that doesn't mean they're not camping, right? They're just camping in older rigs, and they're renting rigs. So I am seeing a lot of Gen Zers. I've seen a return to tent camping. I've seen parks allowing car camping. I mean, all of the things that, we've been on the circuit talking about and saying that we all need to think about to create these runways, right, that I'm seeing. I don't see it as much on the East Coast, but boy, have I seen it Midwest and West Coast.
Well, I think I agree with you. Like I was saying this maybe on the podcast with Scott Barr last week on Outwired, is we were talking about how our industry does not have a demand problem. There are tons and tons of people from all generations who want to get outside, who want to enjoy nature, whether it's outdoor recreation or camping or whatever it may be, right? I think the problem is that we currently, perhaps not in every facet of the economy, but we have a little bit of an affordability problem, specific to maybe even RV sites that require a large entry into the market. But I've talked to a couple association owners, including one in Canada here, a couple days ago, maybe it was yesterday, who was telling me like they've convinced a couple people on like Vancouver Island to change their campground into like tent only, a lot of the sites. And maybe the margin is a little bit less, but you can make just as much money if your RV sites were only 40 to 50% full. And so this guy switched to tent sites, and he has to turn people away. He's got a waiting list now because there's millions of people sitting in Vancouver that don't own an RV, but will come across that ferry and go tenting. And then there's all kinds of opportunities to where do you take that tenting experience to the next level? How do you make it luxury? Do you have something set up to make Gen Z or somebody who hasn't been in the outdoors much more comfortable with the outdoors? And then can you get $125, $150 a night for it? Bet you can. So I think it's interesting just to think outside the box, but I don't think we have a demand problem at all. Yes, for sure there are like I talked about this a lot, right? On a macro level, there are some issues with occupancy and camper nights this year, but that's not a demand problem. I think that's a product not matching the ability of the consumer problem. What do you think, Kate?
I totally agree, Brian, and I want you to go back and splice this, because the fact that you said you agreed with me and I said I agreed with you, that's got to mean Jesus is coming back soon.
Maybe.
And we do love each other, so that's okay.
I agree with a lot of what you say. Mike, you have anything?
Well, I think, I find the discussion very interesting. I have been saying for a while, obviously, the change in the industry is change. And, what it was just 10 years ago versus what it was just 6 years ago during COVID, which was a pivotal and forever change point in our industry, and now what it was 2 years ago, right? And so it's continuously evolving, changing, good and bad, but mostly for the good. And, I don't think we necessarily have a demand problem, but I do think demand is down. I think it's a supply problem. I think as many people have heard me say, the boom of COVID, basically falsely trained, excited investors, if you build it, they will come. And there was a glut of overbuilding and developments that happened in 21, 22, 23 that opened in 24, 25, 26. Unfortunately, with lack of data, there's not a lot of good resource to track how many of these properties open. But I can tell you, in a market like Verde Valley in Arizona, there's been 30% new supply over the last 3 years. And for a small market of 2,000, 2,500 sites, of which maybe our property is 30% of the market, that's a considerable addition. Considerable, right? And so it might look like demand is down. It might be demand is the same, but it is now spread, right? So you look at the metrics for individual properties, but since there's not necessarily market metrics, it's a little bit of false data. So I think that's two things can be true at the same time. One can be demand is down and mostly transient, not long term. But I also think there's been an oversupply. So with anything like there's multiple cycles. We are now in a cycle. I believe we have to, weather the next year and a half as some of this transient demand, rights itself, but also as the new supply absorbs and stabilizes. So that's just an answer to kind of what you guys are talking about. What's new in CRR's world? We continue to be excited with, the evolution of the industry. As, of course, Brian, we continue to partner with you on new technologies and innovations in AI. The AI voice Rigsby, which was, partnered with Inside Perks, the first of its kind to be rolled out, is now he's probably in high school at his level of training. He started out in nursery school. In another 2 or 3 months, he'll probably graduate from college and then get his master's. So he's taking reservations, he's learning. He's absolutely helped us reduce missed call volume and help with the customer experience. But we continue to see, what opportunities are there from a customer experience with AI, and also from an efficiency standpoint. Again, many folks have heard me say, AI does not replace hospitality; it enhances hospitality. And so we're continuing to focus on, how we can do that and help evolve the industry to the modern world. We continue to really focus on, sourcing new third-party management contracts and consulting engagements. We believe there's an opportunity for us to really help provide owners, whether they are existing management companies or independent owners who just don't want to do it anymore. But we've been exploring in a lot of different markets. I just came back from Montana and spent several days in Yellowstone. Fantastic and glorious. It just reminds us why we do what we do, and where we do it, and how fortunate we are to do what we do where we do it. It was just an awesome experience. So that's kind of what's new with us. I'm now a whitewater rafting expert and didn't die, so happy to say.
Nice.
I don't know if you guys can still hear me. I'm trying to fix my camera. My phone said it was overheating, so I had to turn everything off. But
that's what you get for sitting outside. That would happen to me if I was outside.
I know. I should have had a nice, clean office. I can't afford the office stuff. I don't make enough money yet, so I'm waiting on it. Well, while I get my camera back and figure all this stuff out, Wendy, you've been kind of quiet because we haven't asked you any questions up there. But what, for the people who don't know you, what is hospitality across America?
Well, I came from the hotel industry, and I said 30 plus years in the hotel industry, and finished my career with a real estate investment trust and decided to retire. So I actually retired for 3 years and bought a rig and went on the excursion of a lifetime, going all the way across the country in a big, huge coach. So I'm loving Sandy, what she's doing, and we saw the goods and the bads and the uglies. And actually, when we landed in Alabama, we bought a RV site with a casita, and that was our home with the RV, and we just had a great time. But I got bored, so I decided to call the Margaritaville guys up. That I worked with them in the hotel industry, and started my career with Camp Margaritaville. And that's pretty much how I started the career, doing all kinds of consulting with them, did their SOPs, did their QA, because they knew hotels, but they didn't know campgrounds. Well, I really started to know campgrounds. So I helped them with the resorts that they had 5 at the time. So fast forward many years later, and I am pretty much, as I mentioned before, I'm a chameleon. I will do pretty much anything. Mike and I work together a lot, and Mike will call me up and say, hey, I need some revenue management support. Can you work for a couple of months and do some revenue management? Can you do HR? Hey, can you look at our operations efficiency? So really what I do is I will go in, and I'm very boutique, because I want the long-term with my clients. So like I work for Mike, and then for a month, and then I disappear for about 3 months, and then he calls me up again. So really mine is a long-term, and I'll work with, like right now I'm working with the city park in Texas, and small park. I'm not a huge expensive consultant, and I'm just charging them on an hourly basis and just helping them get through some of their efficiencies, some social media, some marketing, teaching them what AI is, but it's the city. So it's, you got to be careful with what they do. So then, I'm working with a large RV resort here in Alabama, and it's very different. So I'm working all the revenue management. I'm doing CampSpot, which thank God with Mike, because I learned everything I needed to do with CampSpot through Mike. So I'm actually now working with CampSpot, and they're sending me to clients that need extra support. So again, I'm a chameleon. I was a GM in the hotel industry. I have run campgrounds. I've run hotels. I've done revenue management. So whatever the client needs, I'll work with them to see if I can help them. But I will never say, hey, you're, I can't work for you, or I can work with you. It really just depends on what they need. And it's really interesting. Sandy was talking about the tents. I was just up in Wisconsin visiting some campgrounds, and there was like 7 days, and it was a little city park up in Wisconsin, and 7 days they were full, and it was 4th of July weekend with tents. They had 60 sites, and 37 of them were tents and cars. And I was surprised about the cars, but now a great hearing from you guys on that, because I couldn't believe how many cars there were, like 6 or 7 cars that
Oh my
people
gosh!
were just sleeping in.
Don't get Sandy going on car camping. We'll be here for like 4 hours.
I loved it. And it's revenue.
Yeah, I'd like to just advocate for the folks on this call. Sandy Wendy, she's a chameleon. I actually call her a Swiss Army knife, right? You can kind of, she's got a lot of different functions that she could do. And as I look at the call, I haven't had a chance yet to work with specialized accounting, but I think I've paid everybody on this call, but nobody has paid me. Like
I'm trying.
Where I need someone to pay me. But I think, it's interesting.
What are you talking about? You've been paid in revenue management advice. You've been paid in everything.
God.
You guys. You've been paid in marketing. You've been paid in
Brian.
Where's my tiny violin? But what I think is really true, Wendy had mentioned about the little property. What I think kind of, is indicative, especially of Sandy and Brian and Wendy, and I don't mean to leave, specialized guys out, but, service. I think, even if you don't get paid, Wendy, Sandy, Brian, you guys can't help yourself, but helping people, right? And like you said, you unretired. And I just think that's a hallmark of what we do. And, the folks on this call, just a shout out to those that are listening, we've got some tremendous advocates for our industry and leaders in our industry that are right here, for folks that sometimes will not even take a penny or refuse to take a penny because they just want to help, and they'll answer a question, or they'll provide you a link, or they'll give you a resource. And so I think that's a message for us as we go forward in this industry, and why I love this so much. It's a little bit different than the hospitality industry. It's just the advocacy and the partnership of rising tide raises all ships. Even though we have competitors like ROF is a competitor for us at Blue Water, but we talk regularly and help each other, and it's just an important component of what we do. So that's just a little bit of an esoteric soliloquy, if you will, but I think that's important for us to know. And good job for you guys.
As much as that was beautiful, I want to go back to car camping for a second. Just because now let me explain, because I don't want to get into the long conversation with Sandy about it, right? But what interests me though is the original conversation that we had about Mike. You're saying there's not a demand issue. I don't necessarily disagree with you. I question whether the demand is. No, that's wrong, because I don't think there's a demand issue at all. Either whether it's an RV or in tent or in glamping or whatever. I think right now it's an affordability issue. Can I afford to put gas in the rig? Can I afford to go 1,000 miles versus 200 and staying closer to my home? Can I afford the premium full hookup site, or can I afford the state park instead this year?
That still translates to demand, though, Brian. I understand what you're saying. That doesn't mean that there's not a desire, right? But I also desire to go on more trips this year, right?
That's what I'm equivalating demand with, to be clear, is desire. When I speak about it right now on this podcast, I'm saying demand.
So there's a difference. That's intent, right? And intent does not necessarily mean demand. I mean, you can intend to do something all day long, but unless you put that in the bank, that doesn't translate to demand. So I hear you. I don't disagree that there's an affordability issue. And as all the KOA statistics have shown, frequency is down, right? And that's obviously dependent upon market. But they're different. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I agree with you, but that's only part one, right? So then part two is if there is still demand, like not desire, but there is still, if your desire is to stay in the full hookup pull through, but or just to go camping, then you're still demanding a site. You're just not demanding the same type of site or accommodation that you were before. So is there a point where, just like this campground that converted in Vancouver Island, or the one that Wendy said was full of tents and full of car camping, is there a point in time where owners step back and look at, okay, well, demand, desire, whatever you want to call it, right? Both in some cases has changed or is down or is up or has fluctuated or spread out into new inventory or whatever it is, right? Is there a way that I can meet that demand slash desire by offering a differentiated kind of product?
It's a good question, but I would be careful if I'm extrapolating what you're saying is, are you downgrading to make it more affordable? And does that mean that you still have demand? But I would be careful with that because the numbers don't say that. In both the hotel industry and the camping industry, if you look at CoStar's report in the hotel industry is also struggling, except in the luxury segment. Luxury segment is up. All of the numbers when on the data dig say the exact same thing. Right? The luxury properties, the larger full service properties are performing and outperforming the smaller ones with a lower ADR. So while I understand what you're saying is maybe there's an opportunity to say that there's desire. So instead of spending the $100 on the large site, they'll spend 50. I don't think the numbers don't say that that's true.
So Mike, I have a question though, because you've got RV resorts, you've got campgrounds, and then you've got glamping, right? So RV resorts, yes, that's the luxury in our world, in the hotel world. But then you also have campgrounds where they have sites that they can say, that I will accept more tents and put more tents in inventory, tent sites in inventory to sell those tent sites. I don't think like your resorts are spectacular. They're gorgeous.
I'm not just saying my properties I'm not talking about my properties. I'm talking about industry. And again, KOA, which has a diversity of sites, including tents, is not saying that the tent market is up, right? And so I think it's got to be some data digging.
But yes, it does, because go ahead, Sandy. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think you're all right. And what's interesting is it's not about everything being a tent or everything not being a tent.
Right.
What research has shown us, and we've now just started a new thing where we're actually working with statisticians to calculate out where we're going to be based on current statistics. And one of the things that it identified is that over the last 10 years, we lost onboarding processes. At tent camping, that's what it was. I always called it the gateway drug, right? Young people who couldn't afford to buy a RV would get a tent, and they'd start out camping in their backyard. And then they moved up to, hey, I'm going to camp in a campground. And then they moved up to, oh my gosh, look at the rain and that guy over there. I want one of those. So tents were the best sales tool the RV industry ever had. But somehow we managed to close them out and come up with this idea that we couldn't have tent campers in our campgrounds anymore because we were an RV park. And so what we're seeing is we've got to find more onboarding processes for younger people. So we don't want to offer necessarily all of our sites, but we do need to have a certain percentage of them to start bringing people in who can't afford the RV yet. Otherwise, we're going to end up running out of runway.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're both, like Sandy said, I think we're all right. And I think that's part of the reason that it's so hard to diagnose. You're right, Mike. There is a K-shaped economy. The luxury people are still spending. There's no question about that. At the same time, there seems to be a small increase in demand in let's call it regular traditional tent camping. But I think there's also a market for the luxury tent camping market, or the thoughtfully curated kind of state park clone that like Jeremy Johnson has done way better up in Michigan, right? I think there's opportunities for, I think we've been so focused for the last 40 to 60 years, and I'm speaking on a macro level. There are certainly people who do this well, and there are exceptions to what I'm about to say. But we've been focused on what Sandy said, making an RV park only for RVs and hanging the entire hat of the industry on the RV industry, period. And I think if we do that, I'm not saying go away from RVs, but if we do that and we also diversify with rentals and glamping and maybe tent camping, but maybe more of a luxury product if you need to do that at a place like Verde Ranch or something like that, right? Maybe if you just put some more different type of thought into the process, then there's opportunities to expand your revenue. I want to give that back to Wendy to tackle that. And then Tyler, I want to hear your thoughts on the accounting aspect of it too.
Well, it's really interesting. I did a blog a couple of weeks ago on RV bookings are soft, no doubt about it, but your glamping is not. So I've got 4 clients are just glamping and luxury glamping resorts. And one's up in Charlemont, Massachusetts. And they just opened in October and they're running 80% occupancy and they're running a $400 rate. And you know why? Because they're pulling it from Boston. They're pulling it from New York. And so you do have the luxury side, but glamping is not down as much. Yeah, of course, a little bit, but people still want to pay that money and go for a 2-night or 3-night stay.
Glamping's not down at all. Glamping continues to be up double digits.
So the question is, when you look at the RV side, do you put those tents in? Like Verdi's a perfect example of a glamping. It's an RV resort, but it's also glamping. And does the industry start focusing a little bit more? Cabins, yeah, but the safari tents, the tents, and even smaller tents. And one of the things I was recommending to the city park that I was doing is buy some tents and rent them out, and because, and that's a big thing is that, again, we're trying to just get heads in beds or heads in sites. And let's get, be able to rent the tents out for $30 and the site for $10. Again, they're a lower cost, and that may be the way some of us do it. We just got to be creative.
Sure, but it doesn't always have to be a downgrade too, is what I'm saying, right? So let's just, we're going to pick on Verde, for example, right, for a second. And the revenue way better than I ever do. Wendy and Mike, you guys have worked on all that stuff, right? But so I think nobody's arguing that, like, Mike, you should rent tent sites for $30 at Verde Ranch every year.
Right.
But perhaps a space for a luxury curated tent that you buy, maybe you buy like 15, 20 of these, you set them all up, they're really nice tents, you curate the site, you landscape it, you have it all ready to go with sleeping bags, whatever else, and then you sell that product for $125, $150. That's luxury. To the luxury person who's in Phoenix or in Sedona or in somewhere else who wants to see something different, then that doesn't take away the aesthetic of your site. It makes it still high end, and it gives you something to fill while the RV sites are temporarily down because of supply or whatever else, right?
Define luxury tent. Now, is that like a Coleman Insta tent that's nice, or is it one of the ones like a safari tent, etc.?
I think it depends on you and your resort. Like, it could be different either way. I think you can make a really nice Coleman tent look really good on the site if you set it up well.
So, and I think, and look, and the goal is not to poo-poo what you're saying. I completely agree with your idea about glamping. Tenting is a very different experience. Tenting without a bathroom, without electric, without facilities, just kind of roughing it, is a very, very different experience. But what you're describing is, again, more in the glamping world, which isn't down and people continue to do. And I recommend that to every property that we discuss, because people do want to do that. They do want to experience it, but they want to experience glamping, not necessarily tenting. Tenting is its own world, which is a great world. And we've had that, experience at a couple of our properties. But it's a very different experience. I'm not saying that couldn't work if you curated a tent site that isn't glamping, but I think you'd have a hard time attracting the customer that's looking for a glamping experience, so to speak.
Well, I agree with you, but I think there's a whole other world of people who aren't exposed to glamping or don't have $200 or $300 a night to spend on glamping. That, like, you can buy. I'm not talking about a $30 Coleman tent even. You can buy I had these. I used to go backpacking all the time, like a really nice $300, $400 Nemo tent. They're like really well designed and ventilated and curated. And yes, it's a different type of audience like you're talking about, but it's an audience. And if your occupancy is down, I'm not saying yours is, I'm just saying generally macro in the industry, right? Then maybe that's something that you look at, just different types of ideas that fit your specific thing. What do you think of the numbers, Tyler? Do the numbers add up? Can somebody
I mean, I'm happy to weigh in as the nerd. I mean, because here's the hard part is, like, all the rest of you guys, you're involved at the guest level of curating that experience. We're after the fact. We're picking up the pieces, seeing what came out on the other end. Now, what I will say is, like, accounting's a service. So maybe it is we are skewed because we see people that are charging higher rates and can afford to outsource services, whether it's social media, accounting, operations. Usually you have a higher average daily rate to be able to support that. So my data set might be skewed in that alone. Knowing that, we are seeing a lot of people that, they've had the traditional campsites, but they're trying to set themselves apart, whether it's glamping, cabins, RV resorts. They're trying to set themselves apart and get more customers in by adding more amenities, whether it's stand-up paddle boarding or, some sort of bar component, drinks around the campfire with a cash bar. But like, as you add those more amenities, there's usually a staff component. And if we start looking at to use a hospitality term, even though it doesn't apply to tents, cost per occupied room, you do not see the returns by getting more tent sites at $30 a night, especially because those people at $30 a night, seeing those amenities, they want parts of it. And unless you're truly generating cash, usually a lot of our owners are seeing a lot more benefits of picking sites and upgrading them to either support, full hookup RV, or start putting in, the geodesic domes, putting in the safari tents, the teepees with, bedding and heated and all that wonderful. Like, we see a lot more of that shift right now for our clients that are continuing to be very successful. And as they upgrade and upskill, we're seeing their occupancy either stay flat or grow, but the ADR is definitely increasing.
Makes sense. Anybody else have anything to add? Corbin, you've been quiet. Like, you can talk too at the same time. Like, I just am defaulting to Tyler. Sorry. Anything to add, Corbin?
Yeah, for me, it's just been really exciting to see folks we've been working with. You all see the decisions they're making, but like Tyler said, we see what comes out of it. And so whenever they're able to outsource something, whether it's a marketing piece to you all or other different components, we see them get their lives back and they get to go spend time with their kids, their grandkids. And I assume you guys see that as well in different owners. When they get their life back, it's so exciting to be able to help them in that way. So that's been neat for me to see in the industry lately. I think a lot of folks are transitioning to new seasons, and so getting to see it's been neat.
Anybody else have anything to add on that topic? I don't know how as always, every week, I don't know how we end down the rabbit holes that we do, but it's quite interesting sometimes to see where we go. I am curious though, Mike, is there ever a world where you add luxury tenting to Verde or considered it?
Well, again, when you say luxury tenting, we already have luxury tenting there. We have glamping tents and covered wagons. And that's why I was saying is a clear definition of when you say luxury, what does that mean? Luxury tenting, like what you're describing is like what you said, a $300 or $400 tent. That is not a glamping experience if there aren't facilities, power, water, facilities in the tent. And so maybe, it's typically not, the customer at our properties. And, the campground isn't necessarily set up for that. But, we're in that mode now of exploring every type of revenue opportunity. So, it's certainly something we could look at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking about what you're right. Like, I'm talking about whatever that middle market is between glamping and the ability to afford an RV and like basic tenting. I think there's a mid-market there that there's a whole lot of people around a whole lot of properties in the United States that I'm not saying that's the answer for everybody. I'm saying that's one thing out of dozens that Wendy could consult on or Sandy could consult on, right? Or you could consult on, Mike, from a third-party management perspective, that just are options for you to be flexible in whatever today's world is, whether that continues next year, gets worse, gets better, whatever we're in. There's always going to be a need to be flexible. Sandy, you're unmuted. You got something?
Well, I think it's all about, first of all, being true to your brand. And so for Mike to go to some of his parks and put in tents would kill the brand. It doesn't match, right? When I'm talking about just true tenting. At the same time, as a community as a whole, we need parks who are allowing tent campers because we do need that onboarding of younger people who can't afford to come in, but we want them to come in and fall in love with camping. One of the things I think of is, retail's always had what they call the loss leader. And I will go into Sam's or Costco all day long to get the $5 chicken. Now they are losing money on that $5 chicken. When I go in there, I'm also buying a whole lot of other things. So it really is about being not just putting up a tent site, but being strategic, like Tyler was saying, in what else can we engage them to do? Because maybe they're in there in a tent, which makes them more able to rent the kayak or rent the boat or go to have a beer around the cocktail bar, right? They couldn't do that in an RV, but they could do it in a tent. And the other thing too is we just left a park and the guy was there in a Tesla and his tent setup cost him $30,000. And it literally was, okay? So this isn't just something we're talking about that, poor people need, right? Or young people need. These are all, there's so many variations of it that I think, Mike, what you're saying is you can't put a blanket coverage on it either. So
I want to have Wendy and Mike go in on ancillary revenue in a second, because I think you're right. Like I remember looking at like grocery prices, totally unrelated, right? Like a week and a half ago, there was an article about how Walmart was lowering prices, but they were lowering prices on like 10 specific goods, like beef or something, to get people in the door to save on the beef. And what would end up happening is they would spend $40 more than they would have with the higher expensive beef, because they would come into the store to get the beef and then fill up their carts with everything else. So to your point about ancillary revenue, it's an excellent one. Mike, you sounded like you had something to say, and then maybe Wendy.
Yeah, well, I think, I was going to comment, Sandy had used the term loss leader, and I think that's a great way to put it. It's, we're doing the same things of trying to attract people to our campgrounds and resorts of, whether it is you throw in a golf cart for free, or, what are the different ideas of promotions, so that you attract and bring people in so that there's any kind of spend. And, and then my second part was going to be, you had said it about flexibility. I'll just reterm that to versatility. I think, how do you explore alternative revenue sources for your property that you haven't done before? Like, for initially, we didn't accept, rooftop tents or camper vans, 6 years ago, right? A little bit elitist, if you will. But we adapted over the years as we understood, how the industry has changed, and that the industry did change, and what those camper vans have become, and some of those other experiences. So I think versatility and being able to be a Swiss Army knife in your property and try different things is uber important. So I think what you said is absolutely true, Brian.
But also, you don't want to be the Swiss Army knife. To be clear, that's Wendy.
Yes.
There's only one Swiss Army knife. Yes.
Yes, it is.
She's a Coleman.
What do you think of the ancillary revenue loss leader stuff, Wendy, from a revenue management perspective?
Yeah, no, it's really important. What I've seen with a lot of the resorts out there and campgrounds, and as I said, I worked a lot with CampSpot. The add-ons is so important to have for the ancillary revenue. So, selling the firewood, selling the golf carts, everything, when you're making a reservation, to be able to show what is out there that you have and that you offer. And Mike's team has been fantastic in trying to create, and Verde is a perfect example. We keep going back to that, but create also experiences. So they have, add-ons that will create experiences. So there's one, and like, I think it's whitewater rafting, but I could go in, I don't buy it, but I can see that, I can find out about it. And that will help me, when I go and check out, I may not abandon my cart. I'm like, oh, wow, they offer this kind of stuff. I want to find out more about it. And so it gives them more, and that's bringing the experiences into the customer. So it's not just about the add-ons, but the experiences, the food, we do a lot of like food trucks. And if we don't have food and beverage in our campground or resort, we partner with food trucks and bringing events in. And, that's what will help bring that revenue in, that ancillary revenue in.
So, honestly, that's true of all of our best clients. Is they've got something else besides the heads in beds or campgrounds or tents on site that is driving the revenue. It's a killer F&B operation. One of our clients, they just have a boat dock on a major river and their campgrounds there, but man, they print money at the bar at this restaurant on the water, or they're a huge wedding venue site, and they chose to get rid of the tents but make it really easy for people to get trailers and other stuff in to do weddings. And so it's like finding that ancillary that your hospitality, your lodging side facilitates your real revenue generating business. And I don't think there's a standard playbook. It's your location, it's your site, it's what you can uniquely do. If you're on a river in a party town, then absolutely run with it. That won't work for you probably on some small lake in Minnesota. So, definitely finding what is that going to be that ancillary that really sets you apart. Our best clients seem to always have that.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, are you saying people on a lake in Minnesota don't like to have fun? Is that what you think?
I'm saying there's probably not as many transients.
You got to bring them there. You got to build the resort, and they will come.
Yeah, if you're on a river, people will just boat up for an hour to come drink and float down. You're confined to that little lake in Minnesota.
It's fair. That's true. Right.
Oh.
Let's spend the last 10 minutes. Let's ask each other some questions here and see what anybody else wants to think of each other. So Tyler, what we normally do is we'll go around. We'll just ask, do you have a question for Wendy or Sandy or Mike or, I don't know. I feel like you could ask it to Corbin if you really want to, but maybe you guys talk to each other more regularly. So do you have a question that you'd like answered from either of those three people?
I mean, I would love to ask Wendy, just because you and I have the similar background. We started in hospitality and then how it translates here. And I'm curious, before you got into this, I assume you did not realize how many crossovers there are from luxury hotels all of a sudden into campgrounds and RVs. What do you feel like the average owner doesn't realize they could steal knowledge, resource, best practice wise from traditional hotel hospitality that really translates into glamping and RV resorts?
Hiring, believe it or not, hiring hospitality instinct. A lot of people will hire for technical and not hire for that hospitality. And, this is the big issue in this industry right now is, oh my God, I can't find the right people. I can't hire the right people. You're not looking in the right spot. And I go back to Mike because I love Mike, but he hires people from the hotel industry and his GMs are from the hotel industry. That's what people are missing, is that you've got to hire for that hospitable, because we have that personality. We love that hospitality feel. And we get it, but the moms and pops out there are awesome. That's what they want to do, but they've never been in it before, so they don't understand how to hire into that hospitality.
I like
That's
it.
what I got.
All right, Wendy, your turn. Got a question?
Sandy. So when you go into a property, tell me what you do. I'd love to hear what you do.
Gosh, let me get comfortable.
My background is technology, so I see everything through the lens of technology. But my heart is an RVer. So I go in and look at it like I'm an RVer. But then from a business standpoint, I look at where are they losing in that they're not embracing technology the right way. I spent a lot of time working with nonprofits, and the thing with the nonprofit was they were oversold technology and then undertrained on how to use it. And that happens so often, in the campground industry, especially when you look at, it doesn't matter if you're looking at a big one or a small one or a big group. They flip property management softwares as fast as I change clothes. Because no one is ever giving them exactly what they want. And that is such a waste of time and energy. And every time they change, they lose data. So anyway, it's just, I like to go in and learn how to do it right and step into the technology. And then also, I'm a geek. I'm a total data geek. And so I want to see what the data is telling them. Not what they think, but what I feel like the truth is, because the data always tells the truth.
True.
So that's what I do.
All right, Sandy, you got a question?
Yes. Okay, Tyler, controversial.
Hit me.
I want to know, of all the different property management softwares that you've worked with or working with your clients, which one is the easiest to get a monthly journal entry from and most accurate?
Oh man, this is such a loaded question because so first of all, 6 or 7 of the players in the space, I actually worked with them to build their QuickBooks integration. So I know the back ends and I know their issues.
Which makes the answer even more interesting, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you already cast the check from all 6, or just make sure?
And Tyler,
So-
my company was the first company that Intuit allowed to write an SDK into their software. software. So I go way back with you too. So go ahead.
Okay. I mean, the cleanest journal entries, and the reason I want to give them the award is because not only are the journal entries clean, they reconcile and everything's perfect, but they have a good night audit function that locks out prior periods so your employees can't go change historical numbers that don't sync over. I'm going to give the award to Think Reservations. There's a lot of other good ones out there. And, their back end side is not nearly, wow, that's going to sound bad, but their back end user is not as sexy looking as some other softwares. But the accounting always reconciles, always check us out, and you never have a guest ledger, advanced deposits, city ledger that all of a sudden doesn't tie out. We've never had an issue on a single one of their, the 20 accounts we work with that use Think. So I'm going to give them the award. A lot of other people do good stuff as well, but they all have at least one or two minor bugs that I could point out.
I don't know if I've heard of Think Reservations.
I haven't. No.
Are they in campgrounds?
They're still relatively new, and they do a lot more in the smaller end boutique hotels. But we've seen several glampgrounds starting to use them, but it's our glamping clients that are doing $300-400 a night ADR. Other than that, like ResNexus always ties out. They just don't understand how to do house Airbnb accounts, and you have to do a little workaround to close them out. Otherwise, you have this perpetually growing weirdness. Everyone's got their quirks.
And I do think one of the keys that you said is that they have the night audit function closes things out so you can't go back and edit it. Because 9 times out of 10, when I have to go to war with one of my friends that owns a property management software for a campground, it's the fact that it's not caught found. And as soon as you figure out what caused it to change, you solve the solutions.
Yep. And there's other softwares where they have a night audit function, but it doesn't permanently lock anything out, like Inroad or, ResNexus used to have that issue. CampSpot, it still has that issue. So that's where if everything always ties out for me, Think Reservations gets the award.
All right. Mike, you have any questions?
I don't.
That's it? You don't?
Nope, mainly because I have to hop off in like 30 seconds.
Well, you could have just asked a question and left us all hang, like ask a really hard question. But okay, all right. I think that's a pretty good discussion. Like, I think we had a pretty good conversation about the differences and nuances and how to adapt and be adaptable and or flexible or whatever we want to call it. But just look at I think it goes back to the same thing that we talked about on the show with many times before with many different guests. Is you need to understand your property. You need to do, in the beginning, or even if you've never done it before, feasibility studies, understand your market, understand your niche, understand who's coming to you, who are you nearby, why are they coming, how long are they staying, and then regularly, like, does that change? Because I think for some people, that's changed in 2026. I think the economy has made it change. Now, whether that reverts back in 2027, nobody knows yet, right? Whether the temporary lowering of gas prices, which are about to go up in a couple of days again, is a thing that's driving behavior. We don't know yet. Scott Barr seems to think lower gas prices help our industry up to a certain point, and the data is there that shows that too. But I think the point is just understand your audience as deeply as you can. Look at your numbers as deeply as you can. Hire a Swiss Army knife if you need to. It's available. You have a good accountant, have good teams, right? Whether it's internal, external, or whatever else. Obviously, talk to Corbin too, who's been quiet, and just overall, just be ready to pivot, move, and adapt, because this industry in the world kind of is seemingly changing a little bit faster than it ever has in the history of, let's call it, camping, or really the world before. And so, if you're prepared for that by understanding who you have and where you can go and how you can move, then I think you're all the better off for it. So, final thoughts, Tyler. Where can they find out? Final thoughts about the show, and then where can they find out more about your accounting firm?
Sure. Final thoughts about the show. Know what you want to do for the next 5 years, whether you're going to sell, whether you're going to own, whether you want to mitigate taxes or you plan to grow, because making a single financial accounting tax decision just with this year in mind is a really bad idea. So know what you want to do, have that laid out. If you guys want to connect with us more, want to talk to me or, the handsome man down below, Corbin, just reach out to hello@specializedat.com. We're Specialized Accounting. You can find us online, and we love nerding out on hotels and campgrounds. So hit us up.
Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Tyler. Corbin, same to you.
Likewise. Yeah. Excited to meet you guys.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I appreciate you, Corbin. Sorry we didn't get to talk to you too much. I'm not used to having two people from the same place.
No
Wendy,
worries.
Well, good.
thoughts, and when can they find out more about hospitality across America?
This is great. Thank you. I think it's I love the banter. This is my first time on here. I love the banter back and forth. Mike always makes it usually fun. But you can find me at hospitalityacrossamerica.com or hospitalityacrossamerica@gmail.com, or also at LinkedIn. So I do a lot on LinkedIn, do a lot of blogs. I post every other week. So it's usually where I'm most active.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. I appreciate it. We don't have another Outwired show today, so you guys won't be able to see more of me and Scott Barr. We're taking the week off, but we'll see you next week on another episode of MC Fireside Chats. Thanks for being here, guys. See you.
Thank you.